Karen, we were talking offline and I was saying that I partially wanted to have you on the show for strategic purposes and partially for selfish purposes. And it's just because I think what you do is just so cool. So welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, likewise, obviously based off what I just said, but you've built a business that runs from anywhere in the world. And I just want to know, because I feel like some people have different definitions of this, but what in your opinion is freedom first? What does that mean and what does it look like in practice for solopreneurs?
hmm Freedom is having the choice to decide what you do, how you live, how you spend your time. And so, yes, of course, that's money and all of these sorts of things. But for us, it was about setting ourselves up so that we could choose how we live. We could choose which country we're in. We could choose, whether I sleep in tomorrow or I, get up and do work. Or it's having the freedom to choose, not being forced to live a sort of Groundhog Day existence, which is what we were doing.
You can choose when you wake up in the morning.
Most days, I've got full control over my schedule. At the moment, I'm working really hard. So I've chosen to work really hard. I've chosen that I have to have my calendar open from 8 a.m. But you know what? There's been a couple of days this week. I'm like, you know what? I need to sleep in. So I just block my calendar for that time.
That's amazing. And I mean, we talk a lot about building a business that supports your life. And you talk a lot about building a business around your ideal lifestyle like this. You can work if you choose. That doesn't, I feel like when people think of ideal lifestyle, that doesn't always mean like I just want to sip pina coladas on the beach all day, every day. It can include working. So how do you help solopreneurs figure out what that lifestyle looks like for them in the first place?
So the last sort of 4.5 years for us has all been about the tech side of people running a business. So that's been about helping them, um, you know, create the freedom of not being trapped in a business. Now with the launch of the Escapepreneur, this is about helping people really tap into what is it they want. Because I know well, let's go back 11 years ago now, I was working too hard. I had 2 kids that I just wasn't seeing very much of. And I had a massive wake up call one day and thought, you know what, this is not how I want to live. There's got to be more to life than this. And so we stopped and said, you know what do we really want? And so that's what I think I so often hear people say, oh, I just want more out of life. Surely that this isn't all there is. So it's about helping people stop for a second and think, what do I truly love to do? And then how can I make money out of that? Because too often in life, we do what we do because we need the money. And it's not necessarily always that fun. Whereas if you build a business around something that you're truly passionate about, then it's okay to get out of bed at 8 a.m. because you want to get out of bed versus, the alarm goes off and you go into a job that you don't love.
I have a question. So I hear you, I get it, and I agree with it. But I wonder when you talk about that, what did you call what was it? A freedompreneur? What?
Escapepreneur.
Escapepreneur. And the idea of being an escapepreneur, which is very cool, and I think very appealing to a lot of people. But what about the concept of saying, gee, in order for me, in my situation, my skill set, my opportunities to have that freedom of life, I have to do a business I'm not passionate about. I don't hate it. I'm okay with it, but it's not the reason I would get out of bed. But I'll certainly get out of bed and do it if I can then, I don't know, go surfing whenever the waves are up or whatever it is that I want out of life. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Absolutely. I've done that over the last 9.5 years of travel. I've done so many different things. And, it's a fact of life that we don't always get to do what we love all the time. But I think when you've got that balance, like for me, it was about, well, look, this is going to pay the bills. It's going to allow me to travel the world. And so traveling the world was my priority. And so, I had to balance the two against each other. The end goal, and, this is what we try to help people get to, is what do you love to do and how can we turn that into something that people will pay you for? But, I had a conversation with my daughter yesterday. We're working on a summit at the moment and she's doing all of my video editing for me. And I said to her, you know what, you could literally start a business around this. And she said, well, Mum, I've been watching all of your summit interviews and they say you should be doing what you love. And I said, well, yes, but you've also got to earn some money in the meantime. So if you have an opportunity that gives you the income, doing something that you at least enjoy, and it's going to get you where you want to go, it's a stepping stone.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course.
I imagine there are a few stepping stones to get to where you want. So how do you help people identify what their passions are? Because as much as people are like, oh, I have a passion for this and that, sometimes they don't know. Like they want that lifestyle, but they don't know what will really feed them. So how do you help them identify what their passion is and then actually figure out a business around that?
It's a really good question, actually, because when I first went through this exercise myself, I literally stared at a blank page. I was reading The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and one of the first questions he asks is, if money was no object, what would you do with the rest of your life? And I was sitting on a plane halfway from Bolivia to the US, and I sat there looking at this piece of paper. I wrote down travel, and I thought, yeah, right, as if that could happen. And then I wrote down help people. Beyond that, though, I had no idea. I literally was so out of touch with what I enjoyed doing that I stared at a blank page. And it actually took me a considerable amount of time, even a couple of months, to really just let that sort of percolate until I sort of started coming up with things. And it's not something that you don't come up with the end result right now, really, really quickly. It's about just looking at those things that, if you were asked to jump up on stage and talk about something, what could you jump up on stage and talk about without any preparation? For me at that time, it was helping people build websites, helping businesses create websites to, get themselves online. Now, did I absolutely love doing that at the time? I loved the money and the fact that it gave me the freedom. But, after a couple of years of doing that, I really didn't enjoy it anymore. But what I discovered in doing it was that I loved teaching it. And so that evolved into teaching people how to build websites. And so it's a natural progression like that. But I think you've got to start somewhere. And so what we talk to people about is, what do you enjoy doing? Now, that might be knitting. It might be, it could be anything, baking. There's so many different things that you could do. It might be, what do people come to you and ask your advice for? Like I said, what could you get up on stage and talk about? So those sort of things, essentially what we're doing is sort of packaging up your knowledge with what you enjoy doing. And if you can find a balance of the two, I mean, in the world that we live in now, coaching is such a big industry. If you're a couple of steps ahead of someone else, especially in this world where we're looking for connection, there's so much noise. If you can find somebody that's going to teach you what you want to know and, have that connection with them, people will pay that money. I built a cake decorating business when my daughter was 8 weeks of age, and I learned from YouTube. So there's so many different things you can do, but it really is about tapping into those sort of core fundamentals and then looking at, how do I make money? A lot of people start with the money first. I need to make money. Oh, this is a good idea. I could do this. But ultimately they get a couple of years down the track and they're not enjoying it, and it's mundane, and it's, it's like you've locked yourself into a 9-to-5 again.
If a person is like, I am so passionate about travel, like you said, so they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll start a travel blog or YouTube travel channel or an Instagram. These markets can be so saturated though, because so many people have that passion. So many people, on Instagram, anybody could be show off travel these days. So what do you recommend they do to stand out when they might be passionate about it, but it's going to be hard to make money off of it?
Yes and no. I'm not a big believer in competition. And the reason I say that is because, again, going back to the personal connection, we're all searching for that personal connection, and we're not going to connect with everybody. So a really good example, 5-6 years ago, I joined a 5-day challenge, and there turned out to be 2 5-day challenges covering the same topic, running at the same time. Now, one was a guy, one was a girl, not that that really matters, but in their messaging, it became very obvious very quickly that I was I connected with the female more than I did the male. Not because of the gender, just, her messaging and the way that she sort of put herself across. And so I naturally went that way. Not to say that his information wasn't any good, but that was the connection I made. So what I would say, and in all of these interviews I've been doing lately, this has come out time and time again, just be yourself. There is absolutely no need to pretend to be somebody. And in this world where, we're surrounded by all these perfect images and, perfect YouTube videos and all of this, again, going back to that desire for connection, people want that authentic connection. And so be yourself. And that's something I'm really trying to embrace myself these days. I've really sort of held back from social media because I'm like, oh, I felt so much pressure for my online presence to be perfect. And then, in doing all of these interviews lately, I thought, you know what? People just need to get to know me. And my customers, for example, those that do know me, love what we do. And so by not just being out there and being myself, I'm kind of hiding away from people. They're not getting to meet me, but I'm also avoiding meeting my ideal client. I want to work with people that absolutely love me and, love the gray hair and the wrinkles and, all of that sort of stuff. And so by being yourself, you're going to attract the people that want that connection with you and would love to work with you.
I have a question. So I get what you're saying. This idea of being authentic, I totally agree, even though it doesn't always feel good, especially in the beginning. But the one thing that I'm wondering when we talk about, Carly mentioned the saturated markets, it seems to me that, doing what you said, being a coach, finding your people, your audience is a way to build a pretty viable business. But when people think about maybe becoming doing a podcast or doing a YouTube channel where they're making money off of the advertising, that seems like a harder lift to me these days. It's very saturated, and it takes an awful lot of engagement to really make enough money to survive. And I don't think very many people are doing it unless they have a lot of engagement, because it's just, it just isn't feasible to get enough revenue out of the ad spend. Do you have any opinion on that? Am I wrong?
No, I think there's certainly ways that are going to earn income faster. And yeah, I think there's certainly, blogging. The first 18 months of our travels, I blogged all the time, and we had a YouTube channel. And while I regret stopping that because I wish that I could look back now and watch those videos, it took me 18 months to earn my first dollar out of it. And it wasn't even a dollar. Amazon sent me a check for, I think it was 56 cents or something like that. So, I was really consistent, but yes, I needed a big following. On the other hand, you can, VA work is a really, really easy way to get yourself out there. You only need, it might be bookkeeping. It might be, I'll organize your email inbox. I literally, when I first got one of my team now, the first task I got her to do, and the first reason I employed her, I just needed my inbox sorted. I was so sick of all the spam and blah, 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 blah. And so I just brought her on to just look after that. Now, she could have taken that. Maybe it's not something she loves to do, but she could have taken that and turned that into an offer that, she could do for other people. So yeah, there's lots of different ways of doing it, and there's certainly different timeframes on how long it's going to take you. But for me, as an example, I'm really keen in the future to start a podcast, but I've also got a following now as well. So I think it's something that you can add to it down the line.
But I don't want to diss podcasts after we're on one, so. But it's just, for us, the podcast serves the business LifeStarr, right? We don't really run ads. If we were running ads, even though we're in the top 2.5% of all podcasts in the world, I don't think we'd be making a ton of money. I haven't really looked into it, but I doubt it would pay the bills in any meaningful way. Because you have to be at that upper echelon. So I always think it's important for people not to kind of set out with a vision that isn't necessarily going to hold water today, even though it might have been a good idea 10 years ago.
I had a really good conversation with someone the other day specifically about podcasting, because one of the questions that I had was exactly that. How do you make money out of it? And what they've done is all of the extra stuff. So not the ads, but it's been an avenue for lead generation, which is then led into other things. So they have courses and things like that. So the podcast itself is really, the top of funnel, so to speak, attracting people that can come into your world.
Yeah, that's how I view it. Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so let's say there's this guy, Frank, hanging out in his cubicle right now, listening to this show, and he's like, man, I want to do that. I want to travel the world. But you kind of get into the, you're conditioned to be the 9 to 5. Like when you said, well, I just time blocked sleeping in. It's like, oh my gosh, you can do that. So my first question is, what kind of mindset shifts does he need to make? But also, what should be that first step into getting to be an escapepreneur?
It's a really, really good question. I think the first mindset mindset shift is that it is possible. And knowing what is possible is massive. I'd been working online for years. I'd been building websites for myself. I'd been doing all of these sorts of things. But what I didn't understand was that if you've got a laptop, you can literally, if you've got a business online, you can literally work from anywhere. And it never occurred to me that I could leave those four walls. That's society teaches us how we're, meant to live. The cars, the kids, the house, all the things that we're meant to have to live the American dream or the Australian dream or whatever it might be. And we grow up with that modeled to us, and we kind of just don't know what we don't know. And so realizing what is possible. We have a community of families that travel the world, either full-time, part-time, or, just on vacation. And there's 14,000 families in there that sort of all have sort of learnt about this concept. We call it world schooling, learning from the world, educating from the world. And I launched that community because I wish I'd known about this 10 years earlier, because there's a whole lot of choices I'd have made in my life that I probably would have made very differently if I knew that this was an option. So understanding and being around people that are living a different way of life is a huge thing. Because if you're surrounded by people that are doing the normal life, it's really hard to break outside of that mindset. So that would be the mindset, but also the first step that I would recommend people do is just get into that sort of space. Digital nomad groups are very popular as well. Just see what is possible. And then from there, part of that, and as I said, part of what we do is about helping people identify their passions and then helping them identify what they can do with that to make money. Because again, you don't know what you don't know. So it's all good and well to say, oh, well, you know what? I'm really good at, knitting or whatever the case may be. But that doesn't mean you've got any clue what you could do with it. But when you're surrounded by people that not only but have been there and done that, then you get the support and the answers to the questions that you might have.
So let's say a person is really good at knitting and they're like, and I love knitting and I want to live in Fiji. But let's say they're not tech savvy because they like knitting. What's like one thing they could do today to educate themselves in, or like an automation or something to get a business going that could help with the tech side of things if that's kind of their hang up?
Well, I'm a little bit biased because as the founder of GoldStar Pro, I built the platform entirely because this was a massive issue for people. I'd been on the other side, a coach, course creator, and typically we all need, 53 different platforms and we need to learn them all and we need to pay for them all. And it was just too much. Most business owners are not techie. And I would say 80 to 90% of the people I speak to are not techie. They got into their business because they love what they do, but then all of a sudden they sit there and they find themselves in front of a laptop trying to figure out the tech stuff. So what I would say is if you want to make that move into maybe it's a course or whatever the case may be, there are lots of ways that you can do it without complicated tech. You can literally set up a Facebook group, send someone a PayPal link, they pay you, you let them into the group, and maybe send them a Zoom link so that you can get on a call together. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but when you get to the stage, if you want to step it up, then looking for a software platform that simplifies it as much as possible. So ours is an all-in-one with a massive focus on people and support, and that it's okay to not know the answer. We have a rule that there's no such thing as a dumb question. We want people to ask those questions because it's the only way that they can learn. So realize that it doesn't have to be complicated, but when you do want to grow that or advance it, do it with the right support.
That's so funny you said Facebook with a PayPal link because it really can be that simple. But people are like, okay, well, what systems can I get in place? And it's like Facebook, PayPal, done.
And my brain immediately goes to, because you can build a website and you can do that, but that's what I do. And so that's easy for me. And whenever I build something, I want it to look super professional and all of this sort of stuff. But we're just sort of setting ourselves up to fail. If you're not techie, just keep it simple. You can make it very, very easy and it can still look very professional. You can jump on Fiverr and get a logo made for $5. You can create a page on Facebook, which has Messenger, so you can communicate. There's so many different ways you can do it without it being complicated.
I feel like there are some people listening to this right now that are just like, oh, oh my gosh, I could do this. It seems attainable. But I think there's also kind of a sense of overwhelm once they realize they can do it. There's also the decision. Um, and you have kids. You were talking about world schooling, and I think it's like, yeah, I have to run a business, but I also have to book my travel. I have to schedule things for the kids. I do this, and it's a lot. So, do you have any tips for people that are trying to kind of do it all while running a business if they want to be an escapepreneur?
Yeah, probably just slow down. I guess one of the things that I would say is that when you are living a life that you really enjoy, so when you've built a business that you really enjoy, it becomes easier. Like it becomes instead of like work and home life, or for our kids when we started world schooling, you know, pre-world schooling, it was I have to go to school and learn, and then I get to come home. Whereas world schooling was, well, let's just live our lives and we'll just learn as part of it. So there wasn't this sort of negative connotation versus the, I can relax now because I'm at home. And I think the same goes when it comes to your business. But what I would do is just keep it as simple as you can. Block out time, get the family involved. Like we do a lot with our kids, and quite often, we get to a new city and I'm like, okay, so we need to do something next weekend. You guys go plan that because I've got interviews to do this week or whatever the case may be. I still do a lot of it because I really, really enjoy it. So for me, the travel part of it and booking flights, that's my relaxation, which sounds a bit weird, but I can spend hours just sitting there looking at comparisons and all of these sorts of things. So get help with the things that you don't need or don't enjoy, and really, lean into the things that you do enjoy because it gives you more energy when you're doing the things that you love.
We always say flying solo in business doesn't mean you're alone. And I think that's another thing people need to remember, that just because they're like jet setting and traveling the world, that doesn't mean that they have to still be doing everything. They can have somebody do like help with taxes and accounting and everything.
But
Um,
I like that you said that if you like doing it, even if it's not something that necessarily every other measure would say to outsource it, do it if you like it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like it's always this. There's always this. I don't know, this math that just says, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. So that's not a good use of your time. But hey, you like booking flight. I kind of get it too. I kind of like booking flights as well. I never have anybody book my flights.
Yeah.
I always do it myself.
At the moment, we're building out this summit, and building these pages, for example, I so enjoy it. And I love the creativity of designing it and mapping it out and then creating the automations in the back end. And I can sit for hours doing that, but I absolutely love it. And I keep, there's that part of me, like you said, that people are saying, oh, it's not a good use of your time, but it is because I really enjoy it. So I'd much rather have someone else do the things. I'm paying my daughter to edit the videos. I brought a team member on to find the speakers for our summit. Do the things that you really enjoy and find support for those that don't. I read a book recently, Buy Back Your Time, by Dan Martell, and honestly, it was really eye-opening. Like it really sort of talked about everything you kind of know already, but when he puts it down and says, you don't need to be the person cleaning up your inbox. If you enjoy it, great. If you don't, you can have somebody for, uh, half the amount that you're worth or a quarter of the amount that you're worth do it for you, and they'll probably do a better job of it than you. So yeah, do the things you enjoy and let someone else do the others.
oh, I feel like that's like the perfect place to end this show. Such great advice. And Karen, you help people find success in being an escapepreneur, whatever version of that is for that person. So we always ask our guests this question: what is your favorite quote about success?
That's a really good question. I keep circling back to something that popped into my head when I first started traveling, and that was that life's too short for ordinary when extraordinary is an option. And that's kind of the motto I live by. I didn't want to wake up at 80 and look back and regret the way that I'd lived my life. I didn't want the kids to get to 18 and suddenly look back and say, you know what, I missed out on all of that time. Success for me is beyond just the work that I do. Obviously, that's a big part of what we do and we need the money and all of those sorts of things. But success for me is living a life that I enjoy, and that, I'm having an impact on other people. So if you can create a life that's extraordinary, then I think you're super successful.
Can I actually, so I'm not going to show my phone, but I saw this quote on Instagram, where everything is real. And it says, and it's now my screensaver, but it says, this is the new 1%. It's waking up early, putting their family first, pursuing their passions. They don't wait until retirement to travel. They're grateful. They work out. They eat whole natural foods, teach their kids proper values. And I saw that and I was like, screenshot, save. Because that
Absolutely.
is success now. I mean, to a lot of people, especially solopreneurs, it's not the big paycheck, it's the lifestyle.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation years ago, and like when we first started traveling, there wasn't a lot of money because we made the mistake of starting to build the business after we started traveling. I don't recommend that. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of money, but we didn't have a lot of money when we were living an ordinary life in Australia. And I said to my husband, I'd much rather be traveling the world full time, doing what we do on not a lot of money than, being stuck in a 9 to 5, living in the same four walls with not a lot of money. So choice is yours.
Well, Karen, this has been wonderful. Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Escapepreneur.com is probably the easiest place.
Easy enough. And we will have that link in our show notes. But thank you so, so much for coming on the show today. It is very inspiring.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff.
Great. Well, you're good at it. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we really would love that 5-star review. Like it means the world to us. We love that boost in the algorithm. So please be sure to do that. Share this episode with a friend. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. And we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.